Hi. Hola a todos. Buenas tardes. Thank you for joining us for today's program. My name is Ana Campos, and I'm the Assistant Director of Central Library. And I'm here to welcome you to today's LMA, a conversation with author Javier Zamora, una conversación con el escritor Javier Zamora. Before we begin, we'd like to thank the National Endowment for the Humanities, our Library Foundation, and our behind-the-scenes staff for helping bring the LMA programs to you virtually. LMA focuses on the diverse landscape of Los Angeles, highlighting the immense artistic and performance talent that has developed in the course of the city's eclectic history. If you would like to see more of amazing programs, please visit our online calendar at lapl.org/events. And for our LMA programs, visit lma.org/LMA. Our website also has blog posts and video links that highlight the library's diverse resources and upcoming programs. You can see it on our screen. Si desea ver más de nuestros increíbles programas, visite nuestra página, nuestro calendario en línea en lapl.org/events. Y para nuestros programas de LMA, visita lapl.org/LMAID. Nuestro sitio web también tiene publicaciones de blog y videos que destacan los diversos recursos de la biblioteca y los próximos programas. We would also like to take this opportunity to recognize and acknowledge the first people of this land. Honor their elders, past and present, as well as their descendants who are citizens of these nations. For more information on which territory you may reside on, check out native-land.ca. And for today's program, New York Times Bestseller Solito by Javier Zamora will be joined by author and journalist Carmen Molina-Tamacas. This program will be largely in English. El programa es con el New York Times Bestseller de Solito, que es Javier Zamora, que también lo va a acompañar la periodista y escritora Carmen Molina-Tamacas. Y este programa va a ser por mayor parte en inglés, pero si tienen preguntas en español, las ponen por favor en el chat. And those attending this virtual program will have the opportunity to win a free copy of Solito. So email ecdpt@lapl.org to be entered into the opportunity to win a copy of the book. It's also on the screen right here. So, al asistir al programa virtual tendrás la oportunidad de ganar una copia del libro gratis. Entonces, los mandan un correo a sdept@lapl.org y hay copias en inglés y en español. So let us know if you want a copy in English or Spanish if you win. Y ahora, para que la gran bienvenida a Javier Zamora, un compatriota. So Javier, welcome to the stage. It's a pleasure meeting you, Javier.
Gracias, es un gran placer estar aquí. Gracias a todos por estar aquí en un martes, en la noche. Bueno, estoy algo ronco porque edité mucho para la final del mundial. My voice is a little, I don't know how to say it, ronco in English, because I screamed too much for the final of the World Cup. And for this, I'm going to describe the book a little bit, and then I'll read my favorite passage and from one of my favorite people from my hometown. And I'll talk about that after I describe the book. So I was born in La Herradura, El Salvador, en Departamento de La Paz, in 1990. My dad fled the last few months of 1991 because the war was still happening. If you don't know when the war happened, probably happened throughout Salvadoran history, but the Civil War, as people know, it started in 1980 and it ended officially in 1992. So by that time, my dad was gone. I don't remember anything since before I turned 3, so it was like he was never there. But we did talk on the phone once a week or twice a month. And then in 1995, when I was about to I had just turned 5, my mom leaves. And from ages of 5 till 9, I grew up with my grandparents. And by the time that I turned 7, whenever I talked to my mom and dad, at first they would tell me that they were going to come back and be with me. And by the 1997, then the conversation switched to, oh, you're going to be here with us soon. Here, meaning the San Francisco Bay Area. They live in San Rafael. And first, they tried to get an air coyote. So the plan was to me to come here with fake papers on a plane. That didn't work. And then they tried to use this coyote, whose name is Don Dago, and who I'm about to read a few passages about, because he had brought my mom over in 1995, and it took her 14 days to make it here, and he was with her every single step of the way. But for me, that changed. And before I get ahead of myself, I'm gonna read from my favorite passage, and it's in the voice of La Chele Gloria, who was this fruit vendor across the street. I grew up in front of a clinic, and all you need to know is that, and Don Dago is my coyote. And the book starts a few weeks before I leave. I leave on April 6th of 1999. So this happens on March 23rd, 1999. Mom trusts Don Dago. Dad trusts him. Grandpa, abuelita. That viejo is a rabo verde, fucking pícaro. But you know what? He's never done shit wrong besides grope someone's ass. La Chele Gloria, the fruit vendor across the street who I hang out with when abuelita wraps up the day's sales, says with her loud megaphone of a voice, her hands constantly moving, cutting fruit, diving into her apron to give customers change. Always delivers the women safely, she continues. Mira, I see, I hear everything, bicho. She swipes the air to keep flies from landing on her sliced fruit basket filled with pineapples, watermelon, cucumbers, mangoes, oranges. I know you get there safe. Where? I say, already knowing the there she's referring to. Over there, Cerotito, with the bridges, pizzas, swimming pools. You better not think you're a gringo. She grins, showing her full set of crooked teeth, her wrinkles cracked open when she grins. You better not forget about me, Cerotito. If anyone else called me that, I would get mad. But if La Chele Gloria curses you out, it means she likes you. Abuelita doesn't like La Chele Gloria's big mouth and warns me against saying too much about mom or dad, about me leaving. If you tell her A, tomorrow it will be J, the next day P, and finally it will come back to you as Z. Abuelita warns Mali, Lupe, and me whenever we come back with La Chele Gloria's fruit bags. But I love her stories. They're loud, filled with laughter, and every other word is a bad word. Vos, picho, you'll hit bad words eventually, hueputa, says La Chele Gloria. I like how she says the first part of the word fast, chewing the first two syllables into one. Ihue becomes hue. Then she emphasizes the pu with a popping sound, landing on the ta, elongated the ah, hueputa. She says that to me now as I order the bag of sliced cucumbers sprinkled with alguaste, salt, and lime. Anything else, hueputa? I shake my head. Hey, vos, cerote. She's trying to get the attention of another customer who's shaking his head because La Chele Gloria is cursing in front of me. She makes that noise by tightening her jaw, biting down on her teeth, then getting a little spit and pushing her tongue towards her teeth, her lips like they're getting ready for a kiss. And she says it. As she says it, she nods. It's a thing everyone does. But when she does it, it's accentuated, like she's performing at a talent show. Both. No te hagas el maje, cerote, she tells the guy, a regular, and they all laugh. Hers, a thunderous laugh that fills the air, rattles the ground, tickles my belly, and it's why I order fruit from La Chele Gloria every single day. Not because she makes the best fruit, but because her joy is infectious. Plus, she does know it all. She's the one who first told me the story of the day Dad left for La USA. Picho, cerote, mira, you were little like this. She calculates my height with her palm horizontal to the ground, which is how you measure animals. You measure people like this, I correct her, showing her the proper way to demonstrate human height. My hand erect, fingers pointed skyward. Mira este hijo de la gran puta, she says, looking at the stranger. You think you're better than me, Cerotito? Respect your elders. Those fucking nuns don't teach you shit. She says it loud enough so everyone in the clinic turns their heads before she lets out a laugh that kilometers away people can hear. Her laugh covers the entire block, drenches it with her thick, moist, crooked smile. You were so fucking little, she continues. Your dad didn't want to go, but you know, the war, dangerous. We didn't think it was gonna end. That mierda hasn't ended, she says, pausing to point with her knife to the pineapple she's cutting the eyes out of. It was dawn, and your mom must have been asleep. Maybe she didn't know he was leaving. He's a fucker like that. He didn't want to make a big deal. She slices the pineapple. Yellow juice coats her hands. He didn't tell anyone, but he said goodbye to your grandpa, then walked out that way with only his backpack. La Chele Gloria points with her lips pursed, nodding in the direction of my house. After I heard this story the first time, I asked Mom. She confirmed Dad walked through our cornfield toward the asphalt road to the bus stop under the biggest ceiba tree in town. Then you walked behind him. No one fucking saw you, La Chele Gloria says, now cutting the pineapple slices into chunks so they'll fit into a plastic bag. I remember your mom waking when the sun was about to be up over the volcanoes. I was sitting up here. She was screaming. Maybe she thought your dad took you. Then your abuelita was screaming, your aunts, your grandpa, everyone saying, El niño, he's gone, help, help. All of them freaking the fuck out. I thought your dad had taken you, but then I realized ese pendejo wouldn't do that. You had just learned to walk. I stopped everything and helped look for you, Cerote. Some of us looked in your property, others up and down this shitty dirt road. We looked in the clinic. Then finally, Memo, the mechanic, started yelling that he had found you on the other road. So we all ran across the field. La Chele Gloria pauses with her knife in the air as she's cutting her second pineapple, points it at me. You were sitting on the roots of the ceiba, your arms crossed, waiting for the bus to come back. You must have waited an hour. I still remember the leafless tree filled with its cotton pods, bursting, putting that white shit everywhere in the air. And oof, your mom. Oh, your tiny mom. I remember her face all crunched up like a prune. La Chele Gloria points the knife at her short, curly, dirty blonde hair to signal that she's got a flawless memory. Your mom couldn't help but beat the shit out of you, but only after she hugged you. I would have beat the shit out of you. Bicho requete pendejo cerotón. Your poor mom. We had to stop her from hitting you more. Except the last bit. I like hearing this story. A version of it has been told to me by so many people, but La Chele Gloria tells it best. The nurses, the doctors, the tamalera, la belleza, my favorite drunk who stops at our house for water after lunch, almost every vendor at the market. Even the priest has heard it. I like it. It's like I'm famous. You've always wanted to be with them. La Chele Gloria continues as she stuffs chunks of the second pineapple into plastic bags. You'll be up there, bicho pasmado. But you better wake the fuck up and grow before you leave. Ponete las pilas, aviva, buzo, trucha. I'm not slow or little like she thinks, but I've learned my lesson. I don't correct her. Instead, I nod and grab my fruit and walk across to Abuelita's stand. Don Dago has promised a safer trip than Mom's. I'm almost 10, almost in 5th grade. It's mid-March. Mother's Day is just around the corner. It's not a matter of if Don Dago will be taking me, but a matter of when. And from then on, once from April 6th for 2 weeks, my grandpa was with me in Tecumuman. Then he left, and I was not by myself. He left me with Tondago, old woman named Marta, who I suspect he falls in love with and they run out. And then there's another group of 6 who in the book I call the 6, who were with me from Oaxaca all the way to the US-Mexico border in our 3 tries. And the 6th is a 32-year-old man named Chele, Marcelo, who probably was 28, 29, a 29-year-old mom named Patricia, her 12-year-old daughter, Carla, a 19-year-old man who went by Chino, and myself. So us 6 were by ourselves without our coyote for 7 weeks. And during those 7 weeks, my parents in the United States and my grandparents in El Salvador didn't know where I was. And it's only because of the 6, but in particular, the 4 who are Chino, Patricia, and Carla, and myself. And they are the reason that I am here talking to you today. And I think that's, I'll wrap it up there and we can open it up for questions. So thank you for listening.
Gracias, Javier. No, creo que lo dejo en el emocionante, ¿no? Cuando pensar que los padres no sabían nada de usted por 7 semanas. Y no, entonces para seguir con las preguntas más, ahora sí voy a traer a Carmen Molina-Tamacas, que es periodista y también escritora. Bienvenida, Carmen. Gracias por acompañarnos.
Es un placer para mí esta oportunidad. Thank you very much for inviting me. And I have so many questions, but yeah, I have seen your interviews, and one of them you said that you have disclosed that took years of therapy to overcome the trauma, if that sort of trauma can be overcome. And mental health is a taboo subject in Latinx culture. Los abuelos, los padres, they don't talk about traumatic situations. What do you think about that? And this is a second question. At what point in your therapy journey you decided to start writing your memoir?
First off, thank you for being here. Salvi Yorker, de costa a costa. Estamos de Los Ángeles a Nueva York. Aquí estamos. Así que, yeah, you know, in interviews, I say that this particular therapist changed my life. But I want to get her across that I have been in therapy since 7th grade. And it never worked because I wasn't ready. I was in the first few instances in school, I had behavioral problems. So I was made to go to therapy, which, you know, didn't work. By the time that I'm in college, and I'm still undocumented, I'm at UC Berkeley, and I felt like nothing mattered. Like having a 3.8 GPA at the #1 public university in the world at that time, where was that going to take me? Because I still didn't have papers. So I fall into, in hindsight, a very deep depression. And going back to the examples of the men around me and even the women around me, none of them knew what to do with what they saw during wartime. And not only that, that's one of their traumas. The other trauma, nobody ever talked about their trauma of coming over to the United States. My dad left with nothing, and it took him 14 months to walk and work within Mexico and eventually make it in 1992 to the United States. But he's never talked about any of that journey. And as their child, and also not only Salvadoran culture, but American culture, it's not very pro-therapy. And so I just internalized it. And it wasn't until I was 18, this in-between therapist, that I start writing poetry. But even after I published a book of poems, that came out when I was 27 during the Trump administration, at the height of the unaccompanied migrant children coverage. And I'm no longer undocumented. I have TPS, but I still can't travel outside. And it becomes very difficult. That's like my second dip. I was like everything seemed to be working, but I'm still struggling internally. I'm not really talking about what I needed to talk about. In my book of poems, Chino is only in 3 pages. And I don't talk about Carla. I don't talk about Patricia. I don't talk about any of the other people because I wasn't ready to go there. And so I guess all the stars aligned. Finally, in 2019, I meet this therapist who is an immigrant herself. She's from the DR. And I think, in hindsight, I needed another immigrant to be my therapist in order for me to open up. And I had tried and lied to myself that just writing about it through poetry, it was going to heal me, but that was not the case. And so this is my attempt to remember and reappropriate, in a way, my own narrative and add my own agency to that story, and to see it in a different light, not as one of that I believe politicians and journalists that immigrants are here to take resources or that we committed a crime, et cetera, but one in which a child, how does he survive? How the fuck did I survive? And in that survival, there's a lot of power that me and that us immigrants, we don't allow ourselves to see it that way. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Yeah. And specifically the passage that you read is the reason that so I need to go to make a confession. So I got your book, Solito, in Target during Hispanic Heritage Month in my town. I'm here in North Jersey. And oh my God, and I saw it. Okay, I got it. But fue precisamente los diálogos de la señora frutera that I couldn't keep reading in English. I mean, because I'm a recent immigrant, I just have 11 years in the state. So even though the way that you have written es la combinación de las dos lenguas, pero en mi cabeza no entra todo el diálogo salvadoreño. So I ended up getting the Spanish copy because it's the one that resonates better for me, like internally. And so I have a couple of questions, and I would like to read a couple of sentences, because cuando lo leí, I'm sorry, my cat is around, it's very interested, because tú has dado el salto de un libro de poesía a una memoria, una narración tan rica en detalles. Entonces, so first, what do you think about the translation of the book? So por lo que entiendo, tú escribiste inicialmente en inglés, ¿verdad? So you wrote in English, and then I was reading, I was looking the name of the guy who translated. Is he Salvadoran?
No, it's Chapin.
What? Chapin? Yeah, but makes sense. And the other question is, did you take part on the translation?
So, great question. The sad and cool thing that we are facing still as Central Americans is that, for lack of a better word, Penguin Random House is the empire. They own everything, and even and they've treated me great. But even in their entire database, they did not have one Central American translator. And through a friend, because for me, it needed to be Salvi, which, I used my parents to like revise some of it. But I also needed somebody to understand how the language would change, not only in dialogues. And the person who translated, he is a journalist. He's Guatemalan, but he had done multiple trips with the caravans, and that's his journalistic work. And so
Interesting.
I think he could really understand how somebody from South Mexico sounds different from Northern Mexico. And so I hope that comes across. So he did most of it, and on top of it, and I have my problems with, and I don't know if Vintage Español is here, but they actually have treated me not as good as the English publisher, which is Hogarth. Everything, like, so many deadlines that no hubo comunicación. So I wish that I had more time to spend with my parents revising everything. And
for the Spanish,
for the
or
Spanish.
in general.
Más cool, porque my parents, their Spanish is still stuck in the 1990s Salvadoran. And me, now that I have a green card, is very interesting, because when I go back to El Salvador, los bichos, they look at me and they're like, you talk to like my parents, because all the lingo that I know is from my parents, and it's a 1990s caliche. And so using my parents,
además.
And then I hope that using my parents as not the main translators, pero solo como para revisar las cosas, that it was gonna ring true. And to put it this way, the publisher has yet to send me the Spanish copies, and so I haven't read it fully. I don't know what it looks like, and so ahí estamos. What did you think about it?
No, I mean, no estamos hablando aquí para hablar de mi experiencia, pero han sido 2 de los años más duros de mi vida. Porque my original book took 8 years, and then the translation took 2 years. So it was during the pandemic, during my separation, and many things that es parte de mis años recientes, ¿no? Pero la traducción me encanta, porque como tú bien dices, yo hubiera jurado que he's Salvadorian. There are some parts that, this is not that precise, but it makes sense. So if you allow me, I like, can I read?
Yeah.
Es la página 122.
¿En la de español?
En español. Aquí, como en Tecún, de noche veo el cielo, esperando a que algo caiga en mi cama. Una cucaracha en mi boca, una araña en mi ojo, un alacrán en mis pies. Acá no hay mosquitero para la cama, como el que tengo en mi casa. Abuelito Chepe no está aquí para hablar conmigo antes de dormir o para ir a caminar y explorar el pueblo. Y por eso me siento solo, solitario, bien solo, solito de verdad. Para mí, eso es poesía. For me, this is poetry. So, and how they crafted the translation. So I'm still like, some days I can't take it. It's just, oh no, my God, I need to leave it, because it's so strong, and the journey. Yeah. And how abandonment, self-abandonment, the trauma, the fear of lo desconocido. O sea, yo no podría imaginarme. I couldn't imagine. Because when you did the trip, it's the same age as my son, my youngest son. So I can't imagine, and people don't understand this. People don't understand how yeah, because and I tell them, because you don't know desperation. You don't know the reasons. You don't understand the reasons why people left and they got separated and had the opportunity to try to reunite the family, even in those in those circumstances. So I had another question, but there's another book, Solito, Solita, Crossing Borders with Youth Refugees from Central America. Voices of Witness, and you wrote the foreword. How is this book connected with Solito?
The book I wrote, I think the foreword or I don't know of it.
Yeah, the foreword. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was published during the height of the unaccompanied minors news coverage, and that I read the book and it was heart wrenching. A lot of stories from recent migrants. So the children who came over in 2016, 2017, I think the book came out in 2018. And that was difficult to read. And I think not the book itself, but the coverage during the Trump administration forced me to look at something that I wasn't ready to look at, which is the 9 weeks. And this is somebody, I was already a writer. I had scratched the surface of it with my poetry book. And just the coverage and books like Solito Solita, which are very necessary, were like, oh shit, I'm one of these kids. I have my own story that I should begin to look at. And that thought was with me since 2016, even before the poetry came out. But I never put pen to paper. It wasn't until 2019, in April of 2019, that I began to seriously write what eventually became the book.
Do you remember what a specific memory, moment, or maybe during therapy, or when did you came to the realization, okay, I'm gonna sit and I'm gonna start to write, even though you don't even know what will be the journey o qué iba a pasar, pero que decidiste.
Multiple things.
Yeah.
Multiple things, multiple como stars aligning. On the page, I had to read Enwich Danticat, one of my favorite writers and living gems of our lifetime. She's a Haitian writer, and in her first story collection called Cric Crack, her very first story is called Children of the Sea. And she describes these lovers. One is still in Haiti, the other one's on a boat, and it's fiction. So in fiction, the lovers were communicating, writing to each other. And she describes this boat scene. And after reading that, I just was thrown back on my own boat. And I just started writing. So the very first things that I write in Solito is actually the chapter when I'm on the boat. And from then on, it grew this way and it grew the other way. There's that. I wasn't in therapy at that time. I start writing that in April of 2019. I meet my therapist. Our first session is late October of 2019. But in between then, I moved from Boston to New York City. And this is the type of, I guess, pseudo depression that I was in. And, you know, the examples of the men around me, particularly my grandpa, I learned to, whenever I felt sad, to drink. So I was on my second martini at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday at a bar. And I'm very lucky, to the point that the mentor of my now therapist was celebrating her anniversary with her partner. And they just kept asking questions as therapists in their everyday life, they do. And she gave me her card, and I emailed her, not then, I emailed her until like September. And she told me when she met me in June that she knew exactly who I should talk to. And she was right. She knew exactly who I needed to talk to. And from then on, the book happened, and that's just like two of the multiple things that needed to happen for me to like be like, despertar, like you need to heal. You need to really look at your shit. You can't run away from it.
Very interesting, Javier. Gracias. It seems that we have a question from the public because this conversation is being streamed via YouTube from the library and Facebook.
Yeah.
Okay, Cantonieta, how did you cope with the pain of reliving these events in the book? Bueno, de lo que estábamos hablando, no de la therapy. I'm sure therapy helps, but did you have to walk away sometimes, get a hug? Thanks, Carla.
All the time. This, and again, I want to stress the fact that, I just gave you dates, but it wasn't in April 2019 till now process. In a lot of ways, I've been trying to write this book since the day that I made it here, since June 12th of 1999. It has been very difficult, and kind of what we've been talking about, that when you are a survivor of war and immigration, you don't have the tools. And a lot of us, when you are at your most suffering and when you really need to do therapy, you don't have the privilege to do that. One of the other stars that aligned, I find myself in 2019 with a green card that needed to happen, with a stipend from Harvard. And I moved to New York City, and my job became writing. But my writing is also my own healing. 24/7, I had to be thinking about this. And at first, it has taken me a while. And it took me meeting my now wife, who is a Reiki practitioner, who I thank at the back of the book. Her hugs, her everything, and us moving from New York City to Tucson, the last place that I would think I would call home. And now this is where we live. And it's taking hikes, it's taking anything that you can think of. I have tried Reiki, meditation, hiking. I became a vegan for a while. And you have to try all these things in order to, and I'm very aware that I had the privilege to just focus everything on this. And I think that really fast forward my healing. I don't think this would have never happened. I think when you're very aware of what you need to do, I think it shortened my writing time by 3 years, maybe even 5 years. If I didn't have a therapist, if I didn't meet my wife, if I didn't move to Tucson, I would still be writing this, and I would still be struggling.
We have two or three questions. Okay, it's a question from Janet Noltenius. How did you survive without El Coyote?
I think Jeanette runs La Casa del Salvador in DC. I think I remember you, so thank you.
Yeah, one of the biggest promoters from Salvadoran culture and Latino cultures in the East Coast. Muchas gracias, Janet.
Gracias, Jeanette, for your work. We met when you're on the route. That's what people call it, in La Ruta. There's always somebody that you can talk to it's gonna know somebody who can get you somebody who calls themselves a coyote. And that's what happened. And again, I want to tell people not to compare. I'm talking about my own journey in 1999. A lot has changed. on the migrant route. The routes are different. The cartel now owns the routes. So I don't know. I'm pretty aware that if you're left by your coyote now, it wouldn't have turned out to be like this. Does that make sense? But back then, you could still ask around, and we got lucky. We got absolutely lucky that we did almost die with multiple of the coyotes, but essentially we met the right one that by chance that got us across.
It's interesting, that the analogía, no sé cómo se dice en inglés, analogy, de el coyote y el cadejo. Porque el cadejo se convierte en ¿qué es ¿cómo se llama? El animal protector, ¿no? En tu caso, eso es como tú lo manejas. Questions keep coming, it says. Bernie Lopez. Thank you, Bernie. Bernie is his father immigrated here more than 100 years ago. So he's a Salvadorian too. Are you angry with your parents' grandfather for forcing you to make the trip?
I want to question the verb force. I wanted to come here. What parent doesn't want to be with their children, and what child doesn't want to be with their parent? So I would word it differently. I wasn't angry that they did that because they weren't expecting for what to happen to have happened. They paid a lot of money for the coyote to get me here in less than 14 days. So there's that. When I did, and I think I always understood this, even as a child, but I was angry at my parents when I was a teenager. And in hindsight, I don't think it was because this happened to me, but because the payoff, once I made it across the finish line, wasn't what they promised. I sincerely thought that my parents lived in a 2-story house with a backyard, a swimming pool, multiple cars, that their house was like the Full House house. That, they would always send me pictures of like the Golden Gate, of like the streets. And in hindsight, I should have known better because they never sent me pictures of their apartment that they rented out. It was a 2-bedroom apartment. They rented out one of the rooms to 2 men, and they rented out the living room to a couple. So when I got here, and this is a metaphor, like in El Salvador, I had acres of land. And at the time, I could just go from one house to the next as everybody knew each other. My world was large. I get here and my world was crunched to a very small room where my parents' bed was right next to mine, and I couldn't go outside. There were no trees. They lived in an apartment next to another apartment complex and another apartment complex and another apartment complex. There was a park like 3 blocks away, but they didn't let me go to the park because everybody knew that that's where the drugs were sold. And that was not the world that they described to me. As a teenager, as I got older, I was like, why the fuck did I almost die in the desert for this shit? And that made me angry at them, which in hindsight, it wasn't their fault either. It's the reality of being an immigrant in this country, so it's complicated.
Yeah. I have another question before the other, I think we still have from the public. In your author's tour, what is the people saying about Solito to you? Have you had people reaching out and disclosing their own stories? People cry. People, what is happening? Because you've been in person or mostly online in your tour?
Both. I want to say 75-25, 75 in person. It has been a wild tour, in a sense that I've barely been home, and that's again a privilege. But on the road, it's been here. I never expected, not one, not two, not three, 4 times, a person who came up and waited in line for me to sign their books, and it turned out that all of them were del Salvador. All of them came here as children. All of them came and crossed the Sonoran Desert. 3 of them in 1999. 2 of them in June when I crossed. And what all of them said is that they thought that they were the only kid, that nobody had gone through something like that. And that's the 4 that I connect to, because they could have written this book. They were 9 in the desert in 1999. And that blew my mind, broke my heart, but also is the reason why I write. For 20 years, I didn't think that there were others like me, sincerely. Even though I knew, like, a part of your brain doesn't let you. And I think it's that part of your brain that doesn't allow you to really look at the story. And if there's anything that makes me feel good about being a writer, because you know, every writer is like, why the fuck am I writing? It doesn't matter. But stories like that make me feel like I'm doing something that matters.
Do they disclose horrible things that happen to them, the trauma, or just they tell you?
No, we you know, you don't, and that's the other thing, you know, if you've gone through something terrible, you don't talk about that terrible thing. And like, for me, I'm finally talking about this, and again, I have the privilege to, etc. I've done the work, etc. But I know that it's very difficult, and I hope that a book like this allows the stories, or like, to those not 4 9-year-olds del Salvador, that hopefully them seeing this book and hearing my story allows them to go into their own story in order to heal, you know. And those are only the ones that I focus on. But yeah, there's a lot of different immigrants from different countries, different ages that they came over, who have, like, DM me. I guess I don't get fan mail, I get DMs. Which, again, you know, I love it. I didn't know that a book could do that.
Yeah, it does create like a space, like como un lugar de encuentro, creo yo. We have a comment from Elisa Medrano. I wrote my story years ago. I revised it some 2 years ago, and I know I need
to
share, but I see I'm afraid, resistant to look at the next. What would you recommend to ease into it? Gracias.
I think it is a revision. One, I hope that you're in therapy. And a lot of revision, like, therapy has really helped me write. Because if you're writing about your own story, only through therapy could what a professor of writing really do. Because the professor is always, they don't really know what you're trying to get at. But if you're doing therapy wholeheartedly, that therapist is going to be like, what did you actually mean here? And you should also, there are times that I share my writing with my therapist, because they understand that this is my process. She's almost like a writing coach. And I mean that wholeheartedly, that therapists could be your writing coach if you are being honest. And it is hard to be honest with yourself. And so I would ask the same question to yourself. Why is it hard to go back into it. And how can you approach it differently? Maybe you can also shift the point of view. You know, with Solito, I started it in what, I don't even know the technical term, is the, like, me now talking about me then, you know, which it was very difficult for me to keep on telling the story because I was bored of it myself. And shifting to the present tense, to the I, really opened everything up. I don't know, different tricks, therapy.
A lot of therapy. It seems that we still have one more from H. Islas. You seem to have experienced intense abandonment. In your opinion, what is the opposite of abandonment?
Love. It's, you know, a book that also I use as an epigraph is The Body Keeps the Score. If you haven't read that, I highly advise you read it. And in that, I really learned that I have a lot of there's like a little test of like what children who have been abandoned by their parents, like what is that checklist, and how do these symptoms dictate your adult life if you don't recognize them. And for me, that was the first time that I was like, oh shit, I have abandonment issues. You know, I was left by my parents in a very formative age, you know, before I turned 5. What has that done to me? And that is only the top cover. Abandonment to me has shown me that I am not deserving of love, and that nobody loves me, blah, blah, blah. So the opposite of abandonment to me would be love, that I deserve love, that I am love worthy. And I couldn't have been able to tell you that in 2019, you know, even a few months into therapy. You know, this is something that I'm still figuring out how to truly accept, that I can be loved and I am deserving of love. Yeah.
We are getting into the end, but I still have questions, of course. What's your next project? I mean, you spend, I guess, the pandemic, right? Yeah, giving birth, How was it? And I know, I would think that you just had a child. Y al niño hay que chinearlo, el niño no duerme, hay que bautizarlo y todo. So, and then, but they start growing. So where is Solito now, and what's your next? If you can envision now.
What has happened, and it's, I guess, Solito was a byproduct as well of the questions that I heard on the road with Unaccompanied. Everybody wanted to know about what happened between over there and here. This is the answer. And now, one of the bigger questions that I get outside of like, did you ever hear from Carla, Patricia, and Chino again? The answer is no. That has been the most asked question. No, I have not. But outside of that is, what are your views? Like, it seems to me, I'm not talking as me, but as the audience member, that you have lived the American dream. What are your thoughts on that? So my next book is going to be the absolute fuck no, I do not believe in the American dream. Don't just look at my CV, because actually I have struggled so hard to be where I am. And I want to be completely honest that, you know, going back more into like the therapy, I have been not the nicest to my own body. And it's not my own fault. It is what it means to be an immigrant and trying to assimilate not only to the English speaking world, but the Spanish dominant speaking world. You know, I have a lot of family members who don't talk like Salvadorans anymore. because most of their friends are Mexican, and in order to get a job, if you're undocumented and all your bosses are Mexican, you know, blah 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 blah. That's something that's also unspoken about, and so that's my next project, and we'll see what it turns out like, but that is, you know, what's in my head.
Bueno, muchas gracias.
Gracias. Yo creo que estaba acá atrás, debajo de las cámaras. Creo que como, especialmente para uno que es inmigrante o tenemos la familia que inmigró, cuando hablamos de estos temas, creo que toca algo adentro de uno. Y creo que no, cuando hablamos de la cultura latina, nosotros escondemos eso, ¿no? Es como que nunca hablamos de lo que nos pasa. Todo se interna, lo escondemos, lo enterramos. Y hay momentos cuando, como leemos un libro como es Solito, and then we read books like Solito, right? And then we get those emotions, and you get that, you know, like I joke, like my heart's very tiny, like I never feel it, but there's those moments that you're like, oh, my heart is breaking, this is hurtful. And I can definitely relate, because like you were saying, like you want to come, you know, my parents were here, just like you, my parents were here. And when I came, you know, my life over there was actually better, because then you come here and you're like, you're in this tiny place. And then all of a sudden I'm expected to look after a younger brother. I'm expected to clean, and you're like, what? I wasn't doing this before. And it's those things. There's so many things that are, that happen, I think, with our immigrant culture and our struggles and stories. But I'm so happy that people get to read your story, because like you said, those are things that no one hears about it. And I'm very grateful. New York Times bestseller. So of course, a lot of people read it.
Un honor, gracias.
And I'm definitely looking forward to part 2 of your book, and we hope to have you back for it. And,
fuck yeah. It'll be in person next time, ¿no? Pero gracias, ha sido un placer
salvadoreños
estar aquí
representando,
con los 3 salvadoreños aquí. Eso es un sueño. Aquí estamos.
Muchísimas gracias, Javier. Y entonces, muchas gracias a la audiencia por verlos. Y quiero recordarles, déjenme ver acá, que si quieren ver más programas como LA May, remember to check out the library's online calendar at lapl.org/events for upcoming library programs, including our next program. Check out lapl.org/LA-May. Until next time, we truly appreciate all your support. The success of LA May and all of our library programs could not happen without viewers like you. So thank you.